She watched an apex predator flatly refuse to die at a cook's hands, and she still could not decide which of them was more afraid. Below the observation shell, on black sand meant to drink blood, the Ascendancy's marrow warden had planted its 4 legs, tilted its skull, and sat like a scolded child. 12 feet of chitin, a plasma glaive still singing in its lower grip, and it would not move. The human across the ring wore a stained apron and a smile that did not quite reach his eyes. He had unrolled that apron over a caliber .50 round he carried as a bottle opener. He looked bored. He looked, if you squinted, almost sorry for the thing across from him. They were supposed to be watching humanity's audition. What Vesra Akul was actually watching was a species walking upright out of the wrong end of the food chain and forgetting to warn anyone. 6 months from now, the Speaker of Blades would die with a length of tungsten rail through the seam of his throat plate. The man in the apron would ask her mother's court only for 1 real cup of coffee and a week off, in that order. 6 hours before any of that, the air in the tent city outside the ring smelled of copper, burned ozone, and vaporized cooking oil, and Cal Rennick was slicing onions for 200. He worked with his sleeves rolled. Vesra had ordered her aide to bring up the aperture feed twice before she believed what she was looking at. The blade in his hand was cheap. The board was scarred. He kept the beat of a song only he could hear and moved the onion into a mound that was, precisely, a mound of onion. The garrison behind him were miners newly rotated back from a shaft called Toloth Deep. They were arguing about a card game. They did not know how badly they were about to owe this man their lives. The summons came stamped on real paper. That was the first insult, though no one but Vesra saw it as such. The 9-star Concord asked for humanity's champion by name. Humanity's consulate on Virith, drunk on cheap thrones and the wrong kind of joke, answered with the first citizen on the roster within jump range. 1 Callum Rennick, station cook, class 3, currently detached to Garrison 12 Toloth. They wrote the name in ink and signed it with the seal of a species that clearly believed its enemies had a sense of humor. Rennick read the writ over stock. He set the writ down. He stirred the stock. He said, in the flat voice of a man asked to plunge a drain, "Send them my apologies, I'm on soup." "You are on trial," said the consul's aide, a young man whose collar buttons were too tight. "By tomorrow evening, ascendancy time. Then somebody had best pack the cleaver," Rennick said. He did not look up. Vesra played the tent recording 11 times before she brought it to her mother. 3 came through the canvas. He came out. Frame by frame, she counted the tools. A splitting maul from a shed, a butcher's cleaver from his belt, the lid of a cast-iron stockpot, angled to turn a plasma lance aside because the alloy read as inert to their targeting systems. He moved through them the way a chef bones a bird, elbow low, wrist quiet, no wasted foot. "He is a butcher," her mother said, meaning it as a comfort. "He is not," Vesra said. "He is a cook. There is a difference." Her mother did not ask what. She was the queen. She had things to do. The Ring of Vaeltar had swallowed its share of humans before, and it had never once given one back whole. It was a bowl of black glass sunk into a caldera whose native predators had been sterilized, mostly 3,000 cycles ago. The rules of the pack trial were written by species older than fire. 12 rounds, the champions selected by lot from the ranks of every applicant civilization. The winner did not conquer, the winner belonged. The 9-star Concord did not want humanity conquered. That was the joke Vesra could not laugh at. The Concord wanted humanity locked inside. It wanted the human hand chained to the same pen that held every other signatory. The alternative, a species this fast, this stubborn, this new, allowed to keep moving, kept sober admirals awake at night. Which is why the Speaker of Blades, Osua Vek, wanted humanity humiliated on live channel. His slaver clients had colonies to keep. His slaver clients paid him in things his throne could not. He pushed the trial forward by 10 days. He sent assassins into the cook's tent that night. 3 came through the canvas. Rennick came out. The recording was where the story properly began. It began with an onion. He was still slicing when the first knife hand came through. The canvas parted with a whisper. The garrison behind him had gone quiet for the card game. The intruder was a Kolvari, tall as a stack of chairs, throat plate high, blade in the reversed grip that made a killing thrust look like a shrug. Rennick did not turn around. Vesra watched him not turn around 11 times. The way his shoulders did not rise, the way his breath did not change. He knew before the canvas had finished moving. He knew from the pressure change of the door. He was already, in some old part of himself, counting. He set the knife on the board. He picked up the pot lid with his left hand and the cleaver with his right. He turned then, and the turn was so slow and so casual that the Kolvari's blade had already committed to a throat that was no longer there. The lid took the plasma lance from a second attacker at the door. It flared, spat, and died against cast iron the way lightning dies against a stone. The cleaver did not flare. The cleaver went in above the knee of the first Kolvari, opened the femoral, and came out. The first Kolvari became a fountain and then a heap. Rennick stepped over the heap. The third attacker had come in through the side seam. He had come in with a shock lance. He had come in with what he thought was time. Vesra could not hear the words on the recording. They were behind the fabric, but she watched Rennick's mouth move once, quietly, in the pause before the lid came around the second time. Later, a lip reader on her staff transcribed the words. He had said, "Not in my kitchen." The lid took the shock lance sideways. The cleaver took the arm above the wrist. The maul from the shed she had missed it the first 6 passes, came off the tent pole where he had hung it against a stuck flap, and it came down once, and the tent was quiet. He stood over the 3 of them for a beat. The beat was long enough for Vesra to lean forward. He was not gloating. He was not shaking. He was counting again, and this time she could see it in his eyes. Then he sighed, put the cleaver back in his belt, put the lid back on the stockpot, and picked up the onion. He finished slicing it. She did not sleep that night. In the small hours, when the caldera was quiet and the ring was a bowl of blue moon shadow, she went down herself to the ring registrar's office and asked personally for the file of Callum Rennick, Class 3 cook, Toloth Deep. The file was not there. The file was, according to the registrar, being read. The registrar was an old vrel with 3 functional pincers and no love for princesses in the middle of the night. He led her to a small side room. In the side room, a very young Kolvari clerk stood at a lectern, reading the file aloud to 2 lieutenants of the Queen's Guard. The clerk's plates were the wrong color. The clerk kept stopping. "Read on, boy," said one lieutenant quietly. "It cannot be worse than the last page." The clerk cleared his throat and read on. Vesra stopped in the doorway. She did not announce herself. She listened. "Callum Rennick," the clerk read, "also known as Cal, human, male, Class 3 station cook, born Osset, Terra, cold climate industrial city, population 112,000, grandfather, butcher, trade skills at age 14, knife work, butchery, small game skinning, kitchen management, small boat helm, coal shaft, second safety certification." "That is not a resume," said the second lieutenant. "That is a survival manual." "There is more, sir." "Read it." At 16, migrated to Holland's World, registered surface gravity 2.1 standard, employed as a shaft cook, but recorded unofficially as also serving in rescue and recovery. On record, 15 shaft collapses, 6 cave-ins, 3 surface storms rated Class 4 or higher. On the collapse at shaft 12, 62 miners trapped, air estimated at 9 hours. Rennick's collar log shows him below the fall for 21 hours. He came out with the last miner slung over his back. He was at that time 19. Continue. At 24, transferred to the Toloth Mining Moon. Same grade cook. Also unofficially forward defense during the Virith Lane pirate incursions. Recorded engagements 17. Confirmed kills unknown. Recorded credits 26. His superior officer notes in a private evaluation. And I read, Rennick has the bone density of a small cart ox and the pain tolerance of a man who has run out of things to be afraid of. His cooking has not improved. The lieutenants did not laugh. Vesra in the doorway did not laugh either. She had gone very still. There is more, sir. Of course there is. Age 29. Dependents recorded. 1 sister, resident Osset, Terra. 2 nephews, then aged 11 and 8. Age 30. Dependents recorded sister Osset, 2 nephews, aged 12 and 9, last known aboard the freighter Kelva's Return, out of Holland Port. Age 30. Update. Kelva's Return listed lost in the Virith Lane. No survivors recovered, no wreck recovered. Ah, said the first lieutenant softly. Age 30. Additional entry, filed by the individual himself. No supporting documentation. Personal note reads, and I read, they are not dead. Kelva's Return did not go down. Somebody took her. I will find them. Age 31. Marginal note by station chaplain, and I read, Cook has become quiet. Cook has begun to keep a book. Do not disturb. How many pages left, boy? 6, sir. Read them fast. I'm beginning to see why the speaker sent 3. Vesra listened all the way to the end. 6 months of unofficial actions against Virith Lane traffickers. 14 bounties collected, unpaid, and rerouted to a small, non-registered fund at a bakery in Osset. A commendation from a Vrel revenue officer for the elegant reduction of a slaver's forward outpost involving a stockpot, a length of copper pipe, and a keg of cheap brandy that had, apparently, been intended for the officer's mess. A quiet notation at the bottom of the last page, in a different hand. Do not deploy on ceremonial duties. Rennick does not like receptions. The clerk closed the file. The clerk looked at the lieutenants. The lieutenants looked at each other. The first lieutenant said very quietly, "This cannot be correct." "Sir? This dossier, this is not one man's dossier. This is the dossier of a small company of specialists, filed under one name because the payroll clerk was drunk." "I checked, sir. I checked twice. The biometric plate matches, the retinal scan matches, the genetic tag matches. This is one man." The second lieutenant crossed himself in a Kolvari gesture that Vesra had only ever seen at funerals. "Then may all our gods hear me," he said. "This morning we sent 3 assassins into that man's kitchen." Vesra stepped forward. The clerk yelped and dropped the file. She caught it before it hit the floor. She held it in her hand. It was thicker than any dossier she had ever held. It weighed in her palm about as much as a butcher's cleaver. "Boy," she said, "tomorrow you will not read this out again. Not to anyone. Not to my mother. Not to your uncles. Not to your priest. Do you understand?" "Yes, Princess. And you too." She looked at the lieutenants. "You will find out who signed the order to send those 3 assassins into that tent. You will not act on it. You will bring the name to me. Only to me. Am I clear?" "Yes, Princess." "Good." She took the file with her when she left. It went into the private safe in her observation shell. It stayed there. In the morning, she went down to the tent city. She wore a merchant's cloak because a princess in armor draws a crowd. The tent city was a ring of mud and canvas around the arena, and it smelled the way she would remember it for the rest of her life. Copper, burned ozone, and vaporized cooking oil. The cook's tent had been struck and repitched at the far side. The bodies were gone. The onion mound was gone. The pot was on the fire. He was on the 3rd of a stack of 7 pies when she pushed the flap. He did not look up. "Marshal Cloak?" he said. "I already told your boy no." "I am not offering a cloak," Vesra said. He looked up then. He had brown eyes. He had a scar that ran from the corner of his mouth to the bottom of his ear on the left side. He had the shoulders of a man who had spent a decade with a pickaxe and a decade with a paring knife, and did not, at a glance, prefer one to the other. "Then you are offering coffee, which I would accept," he said. "I am asking why you did not run." He wiped his hands on the apron. He nodded her to the crate that served as the second stool. "Where would I run to?" he asked. His voice was neither bitter nor brave. It was a question. "This is a caldera. There is one road. The road ends in your ring. Behind that curtain there is a moon full of your soldiers. In front of me there is a pot of stew that 80 miners will want at midday. Running has never once put food in front of anyone. Others would have run anyway. Then others would have been shot in the back." He turned the pie. "I would rather be shot in the front, standing over stew." She looked at his hands. "Where did you learn?" she asked, meaning the fight. He understood her. "Aset," he said. "You will not have heard of it. Cold City. My grandfather kept a shop on Skitcher Lane. He put a cleaver in my hand when I was 4 and told me that meat did not know that it was dead, so it was up to me to be quick and be kind about it. I was quick, mostly. Later I went up to Holland's World for the pay. On Holland, the fights were not usually about meat." "Holland's World," she said, and the way she said it made him look up again. "Yes?" 2.1 gravity, give or take. 32 winters, the file said. "I stopped counting after 20. The file's a bit boastful." She had brought the file with her. She had brought the file because she wanted a witness in her own head that she was not imagining what she had watched. She unrolled it on the crate between them. It was on the transparent, flexible paper the diplomatic corps preferred, and it glowed faintly. He glanced at it and made a small noise, half a laugh. "That is a boy's resume," he said. "Half of that is another man." "Which half?" He tapped the top 3 entries with the tip of the paring knife. "That is Yenna's brother. He died on the second one. Somebody signed his name to mine because we shared a bunk room, and the payroll clerk was drunk. The rest is mine." He said it the way one might admit to a habit of biting nails. Vesra folded the file. She sat with her hands on her knees. "Cook," she said, "may I speak plainly? I would prefer it. Tomorrow they will put you in the ring against a Kolvari warrior my mother's court has selected. He is called Wraith Ninenotch. He has killed 13 sentients in the ring, 4 of them my cousins. That is a shame about your cousins." "He will kill you," she said, "not because he is better than you, because the ring is designed to kill you. The sand is charged, the air is denser than what you breathe, the gravity is calibrated to strip fine motor control from any species not native to Veltar. He will not need to be better, he will only need to be present when your legs fail." Cal Rennick considered this. He turned the pie. "You said the gravity is calibrated," he said. "To what?" 1.4 standard. He laughed. He laughed with the whole of his chest, the way she had never heard a Kolvari laugh, and only rarely heard even a human laugh. He wiped his eye with the back of his wrist. "Princess," he said, and she stiffened at the title. "I mined coal at 2.1 for 30 of the winters your file undercounted. 1.4 is a day off. You will still be tired." "I have been tired since I was 6, he said. "Tired is a place I live." She stood. She did not know what to say. He handed her a pie. "Eat something," he said. "You look like a woman who has not eaten in a week. Whatever you think you are going to see me do tomorrow, watch it on a full stomach. Everything is worse on empty." The pie was hot. It was, absurdly, exactly what she needed. She ate it standing outside the tent, watching the miners queue for stew, and she understood for the first time why the Marrow Warden had gone silent when it saw him. The Marrow Warden was the last of its kind kept in the ring. It was, by every measure, the ascendancy had the apex predator of the Caldera and of 5 Caldera analog systems besides. It had killed a Vrel sovereign in 11 seconds. It had killed a Thantorian pack of 12 in under a minute. Its glaive sang, because the glaive was the least of what could kill you. The glaive was for show. What killed you was the 8-chambered lung that could taste your species' fair pheromones in parts per trillion, and the primary talon that could open a battle plate the way a knife opens correspondence. The Marrow Warden had smelled Kal Rennick coming into the tent city. It had smelled him, and it had not smelled fear. It had not smelled aggression. It had smelled the thing that came out of the tent when the assassins did not. It had smelled the thing that had crossed 32 names off a list and had 2 more to go. The Marrow Warden knew what the Speaker of Blades did not. Not everything with 2 hands is prey. Some things have a list. Vrith Nine Notch entered the ring first, to a roar that could crack stone. He was 7 feet of ropey muscle and hooked spurs, all black plates and the pale scarring where his notches had been laser-etched into the shoulder guard. He drew the crowd like weather. Kal Rennick walked in wearing his apron. He had, at the consul's aide's insistence, changed the boots. He carried the cleaver. He carried the pot lid. He carried nothing else. Vesra sat with her hands folded on her knee, and she felt the queen, her mother, glance at her once. She did not look back. Vraith had made the mistake of a great many opponents of a great many humans. He had prepared for Rennick. He had studied the tent recording. He had built a 5-move plan around what he had seen the cook do to 3 Kolvari in a canvas box, and he had come into the ring confident that the same choreography would not work twice in a row. He was correct that it would not work twice. He was incorrect about who would need it not to. Rennick did not attack. He walked to the center of the ring, and he stood, and the pot lid hung loose in his left hand, and the cleaver hung loose in his right, and the crowd's roar tightened and thinned, and finally, in the way of crowds that have not been given the gift they came for, began to jeer. Vraith circled him. The plasma glaive flickered its warm-up cycle. Vraith was talking quietly, so as not to spoil the mic pickup. Vesra's earpiece told her what was said. "Human, little man in the little apron. Where is your friend the Maul now?" "In the tent," Rennick said. "You will excuse me, I brought the wrong bag. The bag will not save you." The bag never has. Vraith struck. The strike was called the Falling Star, one of the 6 named openings of the Kolvari Academy. It came down at 43 degrees from the high right. It was designed to split a human helmet from crown to sternum. The pot lid moved. Vesra had watched pot lid work on the tent recording. She had watched it 4 times. The pot lid on the tent recording had been the lid to a stock pot. It had been 11 inches across. The ring's lid was different. Some hand, she suspected the same drunk consular clerk, had, in accordance with regulations that governed the champion's declared equipment, procured for the human champion a lid of the same casting as the one on the recording, but sourced locally from an Ascendancy alloy tank. It was 14 inches across. It weighed 6 kilos. It was, by dumb accident, of a composition the Kolvari targeting systems recognized as ceramic waste. Vraith's glaive struck the lid at 43 degrees. The lid turned it aside. The glaive skimmed off, took a bite out of the sand, and cost Vraith 1/3 of a second. 1/3 of a second is a great deal. The cleaver went into the meat behind Vraith's knee. The crowd made a noise Vesra had never heard a crowd make. It was not a cheer. It was not a scream. It was a great communal grunt, the sound of 8,000 people being shoved simultaneously in the chest. Vraith did not fall at once. He was Kolvari. He had 2 knees. He continued the falling star cycle on the 2nd knee. The cleaver came out. Rennick did not press. He stepped back. He nodded once as if to say, "I have shown you the trick. Now we can talk about it." Vraith talked about it with the shoulder. He came in low. He came with the hooked spur, which was designed for exactly the situation he now found himself in, closer to the ground than his opponent in the ugly geometry where the glaive is too long. Rennick let him come. He turned the lid down. He caught the spur between the lid's rim and the flat of the cleaver. He rotated his wrists in a small, economical circle, a boning motion, Vesra realized, the one he had used on the onion, and Wraith Nine Notch's spur came off at the socket. It bounced twice on the sand. Wraith stopped. Every human in that stadium, there were perhaps 40, huddled in the diplomatic gallery, stood up at the same moment. It was not a cheer. It was the way a crowd stands when they see a thing they will one day tell their grandchildren about. Rennick spoke quietly into the ringing air. "Yield," he said. Wraith did not yield. He was Kolvari. He was Nine Notch. He came in with the second spur, the working one, and the last coherent thought Vesra saw cross his eyes was that he had assumed the second spur would matter. The cleaver went in above the plate. It came out. Wraith Nine Notch was on the sand. Rennick did not finish him. He walked to the center line. He set the cleaver down. He set the lid down. He raised his hand toward the judge's box, and he said, again, "Yield." The judge yielded. It was not technically allowed. Somewhere in the box, a Kolvari protocol officer was arguing in a hiss with a Vrel arbiter. Rennick stood in the ring with his hands empty. Wraith Nine Notch bled and breathed on the sand. Vesra's mother turned to her. Her mother's face had gone the pale grey of dust. "Daughter," said the queen, "what have we invited here?" Vesra could not answer. Her mouth was dry. Below her, Kal Rennick picked up his lid and his cleaver, walked past Wraith without looking down, and went out of the ring the way he had come in. He did not raise his arms. He did not smile. He did not stop for the crowd. He went back to the tent and made stew. That evening, in the diplomatic gallery bar, a Kolvari commentator with the kind of long career that had come from never once being wrong on air, took a long drink and turned to his young co-host and said the thing that would, later that night, become the most shared clip in 70 cycles. "Do you understand what you just watched?" the commentator asked. He tapped the table with one finger between each word. "That was not a duel. A plasma glaive delivers its lethal energy inside 200,000ths of a second. The Kolvari Academy's falling star sequence is designed to end an opponent inside 3/10 of a second from initiation." He did not parry it. He redirected it. He redirected it with a cooking implement that his sensors could not see. That is not martial art. That is butchery of a caste we do not have. But he is a Class 3 cook. The commentator smiled a mirthless smile. "He is a human," he said, "from a 2.1 gravity moon. Do you have any idea what 2.1 does to a body over 30 years? His bones are laid down denser than Kolvari battle plate. His muscle has to be denser to move that bone. His nervous system has trained itself from the day he learned to stand to fine-tune motions against a load I would collapse under before lunch. On our sand, at our 1.4, he is not tired. He is on holiday. He is stronger, faster, tougher, and, worst of all, more patient than the champion we sent against him. He is not a superman. He is not a monster. He is a normal man from a hard place. That is the joke of the humans. They are all normal men from hard places. There is no cheat. There is only the fact that they live where you and I would be laid down in the mud in a week, and they do it long enough that they forget it is hard. And then they come out here, and we send our champions to meet them, and our champions fall down, and we do not understand why. And the answer, my friend, is that they are not invincible. They bleed, they break, they die. It is only that they make the other person die faster." That clip played that night on every relay in the Concorde. Kal Rennick did not watch it. Kal Rennick was reading a paper book by the light of a battery lamp and boiling water on a field burner because the machines in his tent could not make coffee. The Speaker of Blades sent the second assassin that night anyway. She was Vrel, not Kolvari. She came alone. She came with a nerve strand, a slim, silvery cord that, when tightened, could seize the vagal analogue of any bipedal species and stop the heart in 17 seconds. She had used it on 9 of Osuavec's political rivals in her career. She was very good. She came in through the roof panel. She did not, this time, mistake the cook for the cook. She had watched the same recording Vesra had. She was ready for a butcher. She was not ready for a butcher's list. Cal Rennick was in bed. He was not asleep. He was reading a paper book, real paper, held together by the memory of a spine, under a lamp he had rigged from a battery cell and a copper wire. He heard the roof panel. He did not lift his eyes. "Come in," he said. "Kettle's on." There was a long silence. The Vrel dropped through the roof anyway. Vrel do not, as a rule, appreciate being invited. Rennick did not have the cleaver in his hand. He had a saucepan. He had a saucepan because the water on the kettle was near to boil, and in the moment between hearing the panel and swinging his legs off the cot, he had decided that a saucepan was more relevant to the meeting than a cleaver. The nerve strand snapped out. Rennick caught it on the saucepan. The strand, designed to close on the neck of a warm-blooded biped, closed instead around the handle of a copper-clad saucepan and, in the way of nerve strands, did what it was told. It closed. It closed tight. It closed until it began to draw the pan toward the Vrel's wrist because the pan was, technically, now attached to her. Rennick let it come. He let it come until she was 3 steps away, and then he tipped the boiling water off the burner into her face. The Vrel died with her hands on her face. He set the saucepan down. He picked up the paper book. He kept his place with a torn corner of the writ he had received the day before. He read for another hour. In the morning, the ring officials found the Vrel in the tent, alongside a note in the cook's fine, deliberate hand. The note said, "Please tell whoever sent this one that I do not welcome interruptions to my reading. If they must send another, send them at midday. I am at the Pots at midday." The note was signed, C. Rennick, Class 3. Vesra brought the note to her mother. The Queen read it twice, folded it, and put it into a compartment of her throne that she had, once before in her lifetime, opened for the reading of a will. She did not speak for a long time. "Where did we find him?" she said at last. "We did not find him," Vesra said. "He was standing on the road. We only noticed." The Speaker of Blades noticed too. Osuavec watched the ring recording, and he watched the assassin recording, and he understood, faster than anyone else in the caldera, that his ledger was going to close on the wrong side. He was not, however, the sort of creature who accepted a debit. He accelerated. He requested a second trial the same day. He filed a rules adjustment invoking the Ascendancy's ancient variance clause, which entitled the host, under narrowly defined circumstances of unprecedented risk to spectators, to substitute for the champion of the challenging species an opponent of the ring's own choosing. The ring chose the Marrow Warden. The Marrow Warden refused. This was the moment where the story quietened. 12 feet of chitin, 4 legs, a skull that could bite a Vrel in half. It planted its legs on the black sand. It tilted its skull. It looked across the ring at the man in the apron, and it sat down. Its handler tried the goad. The goad did not work. Its handler tried the pheromone spray that had once driven it into a Thantorian barracks unarmed and left 12 widows. It did not work. Its handler tried the harmonic that, in a laboratory on Vesra's mother's world, had made the Marrow Warden ovulate on command. The Marrow Warden did not ovulate. It looked at the man in the apron. It made a sound low in its throat that Vesra had never heard from it, a sound that her mother's chief xenobiologist later, in an unofficial report, would call the sound the ocean makes when it decides not to come in. Cal Rennick walked to the center of the ring. He walked to within an arm's length of the Marrow Warden. He crouched down on his heels, the way a countryman crouches down to a working dog he does not yet know. He did not touch it. He held out his hand, palm up, empty. He said something quietly. The mics did not pick it up. Vesra's aide later would swear he had said, "You're a good lad, go home." The marrow warden lay down. Its head sideways made a shape almost gentle in the sand. Rennick straightened. He turned and walked out of the ring. The crowd did not roar. The crowd did not jeer. The crowd made no sound at all. The ring of Vaeltar held its silence for 4 full breaths. Vesra measured them. She had, later, cause to remember exactly how long a caldera can hold 4 breaths. Osua Vek, on his throne of black glass across the caldera, screamed for the next trial. It was here that Yennethi appeared. Vesra did not know Yennethi at first. She looked from the observation shell like any of 100 robed scholars who came and went through the arena's undertunnels. She was Kolvari, but a small one, the runt of a small clutch, with the neckplates of a young female and the wristbands of the Astronavigators Guild. She carried a slate of documents under one arm and a look of tightly wound terror on the plates of her face. She came to Vesra, not to the Queen. She asked, in the flat court speech she had clearly practiced in a mirror, for an audience of 10 minutes. She said she brought information about the assassin from the roof. Vesra granted the 10 minutes. Yennethi took 12. Yennethi's brother had been a shift boss on the Toloth mining moon. He had died. Yennethi believed murdered on a run through the Virith shipping lane 6 years earlier. She had never accepted the official finding. She had, in the years since, made a small, quiet study of every Virith lane shipment that had passed through the speaker's routes. She had assembled a chart. She unrolled the chart on the floor of Vesra's observation shell. The chart was a spider. Its body was Osua Vek's official trading interests. Its legs were slaver colonies. Its hairs, the 1,000 fine hairs that made a spider, were roots. On each root, a small red mark for a shipment lost. On several, a small green mark for a shipment recovered by a third party. "Who is the third party?" Vesra asked, though she had already begun to guess. Yennethi tapped a mark near the outer edge of the chart. "The garrison on Toloth Deep, Class 3 cook. He is a hobbyist. He tallies. He has a book. He calls it his ledger. In it, he writes the names of the ships and the crews and the cargoes. Any crew found alive gets a green mark. Any crew not found alive gets a red mark. And a name. And the name is that of the man the ledger says put them there. And on his ledger, how many names? 35. 32 crossed. Crossed how? With a knife, princess. With a knife or a maul or a lid of a stockpot. Twice with boiling water. Once, I think, with a very tall stack of pies." Vesra could not speak for a moment. She thought of Cal Rennick standing over the 3 corpses in the tent, counting quietly. She thought of the pot lid coming around twice in an economical circle. She thought of the note under the boiling saucepan. "Yennethi," she said, "why are you telling me this?" "Because he does not know that I have watched him," Yennethi said, "and because 2 of the remaining names on his ledger are people I would very much like to see him kill, and because the 3rd name on his ledger, the last one, that name is my brother's murderer, and it is also, princess, the name of the Speaker of Blades, and I do not want your court to stop him." Vesra folded her hands over the chart. "I do not want to stop him either," she said. "I want to help him kill it." Yennethi's shoulders dropped a full inch. Vesra understood then that Yennethi had come to her prepared to die. They went together to find the cook. He was in the pots at midday. The queue was long. He was pouring stew and taking coin, real coin, of the sort miners preferred, that in the Ascendancy was mostly used to plug drains, and he was not, from the smell of it, using any of the ingredients the ring officials had approved for the diplomatic gallery. He was using proper meat. He served the queue. He fed the miners. He handed the last bowl to a Vrel orphan without a note, and he wiped his hands on the apron and looked up and saw Yennethi. His face changed. It did not soften. It sharpened. He knew her. "You brought the princess," he said. "She wanted to see the pot," Yennefer said. "There is no pot to see. There is stew." "There is a book," said Vesra. He did not move. His hand was on the ladle. The ladle was, she noticed now, a pewter thing with a haft as long as a forearm. Everything he carried was a weapon if he needed it to be. Everything he carried was a tool if he did not. He set the ladle down. He went into the back of the tent. He came out a moment later with a small blue book, cheaply bound, with a bit of string as a marker. He opened it on the counter. He turned it toward her. The page she was looking at had 35 names on it. 32 had a small, deliberate diagonal line drawn through them. 3 remained. The first remaining name was a Vrel shipmaster she recognized from the trade posts on Seth. The second was a Kolvari commodities broker from the Outer Belt. The third was Osuar Vek, speaker of blades. Beside each remaining name, in the same fine, deliberate hand as the note under the saucepan, was a date. The date for the speaker was tomorrow. Vesra looked up. "You planned this," she said. "I planned the writ," he said, "not the ring, but when the ring came, I did not run. I already told you why. You would have gone for him anyway." "I was going to serve him a meal," Rennick said. "I was going to walk into his hall as a cook, a class 3 sent by his own diplomatic order, and I was going to serve him. I was going to cross his name over the second course. This," he waved a hand at the arena, "this is convenient. This has cameras." Yennefer made a small noise. It might have been a laugh. It might have been a sob. Vesra stood very still. She was aware of her heart in her ears. She was aware of the smell of stew. "Cook," she said, "I do not know if I can help you win this ring." "You cannot," he said. "The ring will kill me in the end. All the rings do, but the ring is a corridor. I only need to make it to the throne room." "And if I open the throne room's back door for you?" He looked up. It was the first time she had seen him look properly surprised. "You would do that," he said. "I would do that." "Why?" She hesitated. She thought of her cousins, dead in the ring at Wraith Nine Notches Spur. She thought of her mother's face going grey. She thought of the recording of a cook cutting an onion after killing 3 men, and how the onion had been, precisely, a mound of onion. "Because you count," she said. "Because you keep the ledger straight. Because when your species finally does come into our concord, I want it to come in with you standing behind the door, not sold at the front of it. Because my mother believes that admitting humanity into the 9 Star means chaining you. I believe it means being chained to you. I would rather choose the chain." Kal Rennick looked at her for a long moment. Then he did something she had not seen him do since she had entered the tent. He smiled. "Princess," he said, "you may have that back door." He wrote her a list. It was on the back of a stew tent receipt. It read, in his fine, deliberate hand, 1 crate of the local stockpot alloy, 4 lids, 20 meters of insulated wire, a length of tungsten rail, at least an arm's length, no less than a thumb's width. The schedule of the speaker's evening meal, the seating chart of the throne room, the name of the throne room's head cook, and a bag of coffee beans, real ones, roasted, from the Terran market on Vireth, if she could source them there. He read the list back to her. He handed it over. He added at the bottom, in a slightly different hand, "Coffee before rail. Priorities." She took the list. She left. Yennefer followed her out. Between the tent and the observation shell, in a corridor that smelled of ozone and the copper of old blood, Yennefer stopped her. "Princess." "Yenna. He does not tell you the whole of it. Which part is he leaving out?" Yennefer looked at her feet, her plates colored, which in a Kolvari is the equivalent of a blush. "He has 2 nephews, she said. "Boys, not old. They went missing off a Holland freighter 11 months ago. Their names were on my brother's routes. I found the manifest. Their names are not on his ledger." "Why not?" "Because he does not know that I know," Yennethi said, because he is a man who counts, and he has not put those two into the count. He will not put them in until he has proof. If he ever finds the proof, if the third name and the second name give him the proof, then those two names will go on the book, and there will be no rings left to open, no doors left to knock on, no cook left to make stew. He will burn everything the speaker owns to embers, and he will go home to Osset, and he will cook for his sister, and he will not answer any writ ever again, no matter who signs it. Vesra thought about this. She thought about it all the way back to the observation shell. She wrote her mother a letter that night. She wrote it in her own hand. It was not the letter of a princess. It was the letter of a daughter. It said, in essence, "Mother, do not open the crate of stockpot alloy tomorrow. Do not read the seating chart. Do not, above all, look at the throne room's back door. In the morning I will bring you news, and you will not enjoy the news, and I would spare you having to have already forbidden it." She sealed the letter with her own seal. She sent it with a runner who did not read. She did not sleep. The next day was a day of the ring. There were 3 matches scheduled before the speaker's evening meal. Cal Rennick had been drawn into all 3. He drew a Vrel duelist named Thosser Yun. He drew a Thantorian pit fighter whose name the announcer refused to pronounce properly. He drew, in the 3rd slot, a hulking amphibian creature from a Concord signatory that no one had ever managed to speak with, and that fought by absorbing an opponent whole. He won the Vrel match with a length of copper pipe and a wet cloth. The pipe conducted the Vrel's own defensive discharge back through the Vrel's cerebrospinal ring. The wet cloth was for the mess. The whole thing took 90 seconds. He did not raise his voice. He raised the pipe. He won the Thantorian match without touching the Thantorian. The pit fighter was famous for his signature move, a downward pounce from the 3rd overhang. He had made a career of it. Cal Rennick, who had spent an hour before the match watching the ceiling of the ring, was standing under the wrong overhang when the pounce came. When the Thantorian hit the sand at the wrong angle, he opened his hip. Rennick walked over, said something quietly into the pit fighter's ear. Vesra never learned what, and the Thantorian yielded. Later, in a bar off the Caldera, the Thantorian would tell his cousins that the cook had promised him a job at Toloth Deep, and had meant it. He won the amphibian match because the amphibian, when it tried to absorb him, absorbed also the pot lid he was holding, which he had, prior to the match, oiled generously with a cheap butcher's preserve made largely of nightshade. The amphibian vomited him back up onto the sand. The amphibian's own species officials removed it from the ring with great gentleness and no small amount of embarrassment. Between the 2nd and the 3rd match, Vesra caught him in the corridor beneath the stands. He was drinking, from a battered tin cup, a broth of his own making that he had, apparently, prepared the night before against a plasma cut he had not yet taken. He was 3 shades lighter than the morning had left him. "You're bleeding," she said, meaning it as a question. "A little," he said, meaning it as an answer. She stepped closer. He raised his apron. Under the apron, a bandage. Under the bandage, she could see the corner of it, a black burn where a Vrel defensive discharge had, at the last quarter of the 2nd match, kissed his ribs. "Cook, princess. You cannot fight the speaker in that state. I will not need to fight the speaker. You will need to survive to the speaker." He drank the broth. He set the cup down. He looked at her. "I have survived colder things than this," he said. "Let me tell you a small story, princess, because we have a minute before I am back on the sand. In the winter I turned 9. My grandfather sent me down the shaft on Osset to fetch back a friend of his who had, according to my grandmother, gone down after a bad dog. There was no bad dog. There was a very bad man, and my grandfather's friend had gone down with a hatchet, and he did not come back up. I went down. I was 9. I fetched the friend. He was not alive. The man was not alive either when I came up, and I had my grandfather's hatchet, and I had a lantern, and I had a small red book. The first of my books, Princess, in which I had that afternoon written the man's name. That was my first crossed line. I have been keeping a tidy list since I was 9. A little cut in my side is not the thing that stops me. 9. Cold City, Princess. He set the cup down. He picked up the lid. He picked up the cleaver. Do not, he said quietly, look worried where the cameras can see you. My sister watches these broadcasts. She schooled her face. She went back to the observation shell. By evening, when he came off the sand for the 3rd time, Cal Rennick had killed 2 of his opponents and made a friend of the 3rd. He had, incidentally, made humanity's application to the 9-star Concorde the most watched broadcast in 70 cycles. He had also bled from that slash to the ribs he took from the Vrel that would, in any other body, have opened the pericardium. He walked off the sand with his hand pressed to the slash and a piece of tissue tucked under the apron. In the tent, in the moments before the evening banquet, Yennethi found him with a curved needle in his teeth and a length of surgical thread strung under his tongue. He had the tissue pulled aside. He was, without anesthetic, closing the slash from the inside out. Yennethi covered her eyes. She said faintly, "Do you need help?" Rennick took the needle from his teeth. "Sit," he said through the thread. "Talk to me. Distract me." "About what?" "Tell me about your brother." She sat. She talked. She told him about the shift boss who had signed the writ that killed her brother, and the Vrel shipmaster who had come through the Sef outpost on the wrong week, and the Kolvari broker who had booked 7 manifests without cargo. She talked until Rennick's ribs were shut. Rennick pulled the thread through. He tied it off with his teeth. He wiped his hands on the apron. He looked up at her. "Do not be delicate," he told her mildly. "Fill the hole." She thought he meant the surgical thread. Then she saw he meant her brother's grave. She helped him into a fresh shirt. She helped him into a fresh apron. She told him what the seating chart looked like, and where the back door would be, and where Vesra had placed the crate. He nodded. He picked up a small folded cloth from the counter. He opened it. Inside it was a length of tungsten rail, arm length, thumb thick. "Princess found me my rail," he said. "Where is my coffee?" Yennethi handed him a small paper bag. He weighed it in his hand. "Roasted," she said. "You are a treasure," he told her. He tucked the bag into his belt beside the cleaver. He tucked the rail into a rolled cloth that hung inside the sleeve of the apron. He rolled the cloth once, twice. He tested the weight. He looked at Yennethi. "I would like you to leave the caldera tonight," he said quietly. "In case." "I have a berth booked," she said. "The runner has already gone with the ticket." "Good. And if you die, then Osset is warmer than the caldera. Go and find my sister. Her name is Hattie. She keeps the bread oven on Skitcher Lane. She will feed you until you are shaped like a barrel, and then she will find you a good boy, and then you will forget me. This is the correct order. And if you live, then find your own good boy," Cal Rennick said, "and I will come to the wedding and I will bring pie." Yennethi laughed. It was a wet, imperfect laugh. She left the tent. He rolled the apron down over the rail. He picked up the cleaver. He walked out of the tent and toward the throne room. The throne room of the Speaker of Blades was not formally a throne room. It was called the Hall of Verdicts. It was a long room of black glass and pale bone inlay, floored with a single slab of igneous rock that had once, according to legend, cooled in the shape of an open hand. Osuavec liked to be seated with the hand of the rock at his back. The room's front that evening held the diplomatic gallery, including the Queen, who did not glance at Vesra when Vesra entered, and who did not glance at the empty chair beside her that had been reserved for the Speaker's champion. The room's back, tucked beside a service door for the kitchens, held a length of tungsten rail, carried in the sleeve of a man in a stained apron. The Speaker rose to speak. He was tall for a Kolvari, and old, and his throat plate had been laid over with sheets of a soft, hammered metal that pretended to be gold. He was very fond of the throat plate. He wore it that night, high and proud, above the ceremonial gorget. He spoke about the pact trials. He spoke about humanity. He spoke about the sad and inevitable failure of the audition. He said, while Cal Rennick in the kitchens poured hot water onto real coffee grounds, that humanity was not yet civilized enough to enter the 9-star, and that the Concord would, out of pity and out of pragmatism, offer them instead a protectorate agreement. The protectorate would, of course, be underwritten by the speaker's own trading houses. He raised his cup. The cup was of pale bone. In it was a warm broth that a Class 3 cook working the kitchen for the evening had signed for at the door. The speaker drank. He set the cup down. He said with the small, satisfied smile of a man who has arranged his own applause, "May this evening confirm what we all already know. The apex is not always the loud." Cal Rennick, in the doorway of the service passage, said, "Speaker." Ossuavec looked up. The smile flickered. It did not fall. "Ah," he said, "the cook. Come to serve me." "Came to close a book," Cal Rennick said. The room went quiet. It was Vesra's 5th silence of the day. She could still count them exactly. She counted this one. It went for 6 full breaths. The speaker rose. He was still smiling. His hand, which the Queen would remember later, went sideways to a cord beside his throne. The cord at that moment activated the plasma cage that surrounded the throne on 3 sides. The cage sang in the low tone of a note a species could not quite tolerate for long. "You are not," Ossuavec said, "welcome in my hall." "I noticed. You will die at the door." "I do not die at doors," Cal Rennick said. "I die at counters, but that is not tonight." Vesra, in the diplomatic gallery, saw her mother stand up. She saw her mother open her mouth. She saw her mother close her mouth again. Her mother sat down. The speaker raised his hand. His personal guard, 12 Kolvari, all 9 notches or better, came out of the wall alcoves that flanked the hall. Cal Rennick reached inside the apron. He did not, however, produce the tungsten rail. He produced the cast-iron lid. The plasma cage's low tone climbed a note. The guards began to close. The Queen sat, hands folded, watching, and Vesra could not read her mother's face at all. The first guard closed. Rennick met him at the door of the service passage. The lid took the guard's discharge. The cleaver took the guard's forearm. The forearm and the guard both dropped. The second and third came at once. Rennick backed 1 step into the passage. In the passage, the corridor was narrower than the reach of a plasma glaive. It was also, by Rennick's precise arrangement earlier that afternoon, oiled at the second flag with a cheap butcher's preserve that had, incidentally, been used 2 rings back on an amphibian. The 2 guards slipped. They went down against each other. Rennick did not stop to finish. He stepped over them. He came back into the hall. The remaining 9 guards had wisely spread. They had spread into a horseshoe with the speaker's plasma cage at its throat. They came in slow, with the professional care of guards who have watched, on their private broadcast feed, 3 ring matches and a tent recording. Cal Rennick killed 3 of them with the cleaver and the lid. He killed a 4th with a chair leg. He took a plasma lance to the ribs from a 5th, the one to whom Vesra would later award, posthumously, the honor of the guard who almost mattered, and he took it standing. The lance opened his side from the false rib to the hip. It did not quite open the peritoneum. He kept his feet. The Queen closed her eyes. Cal Rennick did not. The 5th guard tried a second discharge. The lid took it. The cleaver took the guard's neck. The guard fell. There were 4 left. They stopped where they were. Rennick stood in the middle of the hall with his hand pressed to his side and a slow drip of dark blood down the front of the apron. He was breathing. He was not gasping. His face had gone the color of dry paper. His eyes were exactly what they had been in the tent over the onion. He said quietly, "I do not want to kill you. I want him." The 4 guards, to their credit, did not move. They looked at their speaker. Their speaker did not look at them. Their speaker was, at that moment, doing the arithmetic that Vesra had all afternoon been doing on his behalf. He was working out in his old head how many men were needed to stop the cook. He was working out that he did not have that many men. He was working out that the cook had begun the arithmetic before he had ever entered the hall. He was working out very late that the assassins in the tent and the assassins in the roof had been an insult, and that the arena had been an insult, and that his entire strategy had been an insult, and that a man from Osset who kept a ledger did not tolerate insults. He turned to the cord. He tried a second cord, the one that activated the personal escape drop. The drop did not open. Yennetea, whose berth had left at dusk but whose access codes had not, had disabled it 11 minutes earlier. "You cannot escape a Class 3 cook," Cal Rennick said, in the same mild voice he had used on the amphibian. "You should not have tried." He walked forward. He walked past the 4 remaining guards. They did not stop him. He came to the plasma cage. The plasma cage climbed its note again, warning him off. He looked at the cage. He looked at the marble seam where 2 flagstones of the flooring met, 6 inches inside the cage. He kicked the heel of his boot back into the marble seam. His boot heel, as Vestra would later learn from a smug bootmaker in Osset, had been reinforced 2 years earlier with a copper strip that in a certain caliber of foot could hold on a burr no wider than a thread. The heel hooked. The boot did not slip. He unrolled the apron down over the rail. He drew the rail. He drew it in the same economical circle he had used on the onion. He drove the rail through Osua Vek's throat plate at the exact seam where 2 castings of the hammered gorget met. The gorget parted. The throat parted. The speaker of blades made a sound that was not quite a scream. He fell. The plasma cage, with no living hand at the cord, cut out. The 4 remaining guards, with no living speaker to guard, did not lift a weapon. Rennick stepped over the body. He put the rail on the floor. He reached into his belt. He took out the small blue book. He opened it to the page. He drew a small, deliberate diagonal line through the 3rd remaining name. He closed the book. He put it back in his belt. He looked up at the Queen. He said quietly, "Majesty, I'm very sorry about your rug." He turned to walk out of the hall. He got 2 steps. He fell to his knees. The peritoneum, it turned out, had opened after all. Vestra did not remember standing. She did not remember the 2 flights of stairs from the gallery down to the hall floor. She only remembered her hands on his shoulders and him looking up at her with the same brown eyes he had looked at her with in the tent, and him saying in the mild voice of a man who has forgotten to close the oven, "Princess, my apron. Get me my apron." She got him his apron. She got him her mother's own household surgeon. She got him, most importantly, the crate of stock pot alloy that she had that afternoon, placed in the anteroom behind the service passage. He had used only 1 lid. 3 remained. The Queen, in the small dawn hours, stood in her own quiet hall and looked down at Cal Rennick, unconscious on a table of black glass, with a Kolvari surgeon's hands inside his abdomen. She looked for a long time. She looked at the tally book on the table beside him. She looked at Vestra. She said, "You did this." "I opened the back door," Vestra said. "Yes?" "He would have come whether we opened it or not." "Yes." The Queen turned. She walked to the window. She looked out at the caldera. "Your father would have hated him," she said. "Your father was very fond of the speaker." "My father is dead," Vestra said. "He does not have to hate anyone anymore." The Queen smiled. It was small and dry, but it was a smile. "Girl, when he wakes up, what do we owe him?" "He will ask for coffee," Vestra said, "and a week off, in that order." "That does not sound like a bill." "It is what he will ask. That is why we owe him more." They stood at the window for a long time. He woke, 3 days later, in the palace kitchens. He had asked, apparently, to be moved. He had told the surgeon that he would heal faster where he could smell food. The surgeon had, against her judgment, agreed. There was a cot in the corner by the great ovens. There was a small copper kettle on a field burner. There was a pot of stock, which Cal Rennick, on his second day of consciousness, insisted on tasting, even though he could not sit upright yet. He tasted it. He said it wanted salt. Vesra came down to the kitchens to find him boiling water on a field burner. He was doing it because the palace's machines, all of them beautiful and clever, and Kolvari could not make coffee. "There is a machine in the eastern wing," she told him. "It can make coffee." "It cannot make my coffee," he said. He measured beans by eye. He ground them with a small hand mill that Yenna T had, without being asked, carried from Osset in her personal luggage on the return leg of a berth she had never taken. He poured hot water over the grounds. He waited. He poured the coffee into a bone cup, which was the only cup that was that morning to hand. He offered her the cup. She took it. She sipped. It was the worst coffee she had ever drunk. It was the best coffee she had ever drunk. She could not decide. "Class 3, he said. "That is what they trained me for." "Cook," she said, "I have brought you an offer." He set his own cup down. He waited. "A marshal's cloak," she said, "the Queen's own, command of a wing of the fleet, a house on Valtar, a seat at the Concord table, a voice in the room. My mother has agreed." He considered. He picked up his cup. He drank. "No," he said. "No, witch. No cloak, no fleet, no house on Valtar, no seat. I am not a marshal, I am a cook. If I stand at your Concord table, I will spend the next year of my life being paraded around at receptions to demonstrate that humanity has learned to sit at a table. This is a fine thing to demonstrate. I do not want to be the exhibit. You would be able to do a great deal of good from that seat." "I would," he said, "but not the good I want. I want to go home. I want a week off. I want to see my sister. I want to find my nephews, if my nephews are anywhere to be found. I want to eat my sister's bread. I want to make her a pot of stew that she does not have to serve to anyone else. I want to make sure the ledger is truly closed." He tapped the small blue book, which was on the counter beside him. "There is one line I have not drawn," he said, "and it is not a name yet. I need to be sure before I write it. If I write it, I will go into your Concord's records as an unresolved matter. Better I write it in Osset than in your hall." Vesra folded her hands over her cup. She thought about her mother's face when the Queen had said, "Girl, when he wakes up, what do we owe him? There will be a fleet of your enemies who make you their business now, cook," she said. "The speaker had partners. The partners had partners. They will look for you." "They will not find me," Cal Rennick said. "I do not wash windows. I do not fight for thrones. I do not answer writs, but I do keep a very tidy list. You could keep your list from my hall." "I could. But then I would keep your hall instead of my hall. That is not the trade I meant to make." Vesra let her breath out. She had, all night, prepared a second offer and a third and a fourth. She let them all go. "What can I give you," she said, "that you would take?" He thought about it. He looked at her over the cup. "A ship," he said, "back to Virith. My clothes, the cleaver, the pot lid, the rail, Yenna's ticket refunded. A signed order releasing me from any further diplomatic obligation to the 9-star Concord for the natural remainder of my life. And 1 bag of these beans." "That is a small bill. That is my whole bill. Nothing else." He hesitated. He looked at her over the cup. He set the cup down. He said quietly, "Princess, cook. When you come to the Concord table without me, when you sit at it in my place, do not chain us in beside you. Do not sit us on the bench for the small children. Sit us at the same table. Set our plate the same way you set your own. Do not ask us to be like you. Do not ask us to be less than we are. Set the plate and let us sit down." She looked at her hands. Her hands were shaking very slightly on the bone cup. "I will set the plate," she said. "Good," he said. "Then eat something. You look like a woman who has not eaten in a week, Everything is worse on empty. He turned back to the field burner. He measured beans. He ground them. Over the empty ring, in the caldera outside, the Marrow Warden was still sitting down. Its handlers had, on the second day, gone home. The gates had been opened, out of politeness, and the Marrow Warden had refused to leave. It sat on the black sand. It looked at nothing. Occasionally, it made the low sound in its throat that the Queen's chief xenobiologist would, at the next lecture in the palace hall, describe as the sound the ocean makes when it decides not to come in. Yennefer visited the ring one evening at dusk. She stood at the rim and looked down. The Marrow Warden looked up. Yennefer, who had never in her life addressed an apex predator, said, "He is going home." The Marrow Warden made the sound. "He said to say goodbye to you, if you were still here." The Marrow Warden lay down, its head sideways, made a shape almost gentle in the sand. The Queen ordered the ring closed the next morning. She ordered the Marrow Warden released to a low-gravity preserve on the far side of the moon. The Marrow Warden went quietly when the transport arrived. It has not, at the time of these records, been observed to make the low sound again. Kal Rennic's ship left for Vireth on the third dawn after he woke. He wore his own clothes and his own apron. He carried the cleaver and the pot lid and the rail. He carried in his belt the small blue book and one paper bag of coffee beans. He carried nothing else. He stood on the loading ramp for a moment. He looked at Vesra. He looked at Yennefer. "You will visit," he said, meaning both of them. "Both of you in Osset. Hattie will feed you. I will make stew. It will be the last request I make of the Nine-Star Conquered, so you will please honor it." "We will visit," Vesra said. "Bring good boots," he said. "Osset is cold." He turned. He went up the ramp. The door closed. The ship rose. She watched it out of the atmosphere from the observation shell. 6 months later, she stood in good boots on a snowy street in a small Terran city. Skitcher Lane was narrow. It smelled of yeast and coal smoke. Yennefer was beside her, wrapped in 3 layers of a Kolvari weave that was intended for a much warmer planet. Yennefer's plates had gone the color of embarrassment. Yennefer had, in the last week, discovered that she loved bread. The door of the bakery had a small bell. The bell rang when Vesra pushed the door. A woman looked up from the counter. She was short. She had brown eyes. She had flour on her nose. "You will be the princess," Hattie said. Kal put the kettle on. Kal was in the back. He was in an apron. He was slicing onions. There was a cast-iron pot on the stove, and the pot had a lid, and the lid was beautifully clean. He looked up when they came in. "Princess," he said mildly. "Yenna, sit. Everything is worse on empty." They sat. Hattie brought bread. Kal brought stew. Kal poured coffee. It was good coffee this time. He had apparently found his beans. Over the meal, he opened briefly the small blue book on the corner of the table. Vesra had not seen it in 6 months. She saw now that a 4th name had been added under the 3 she remembered. The name was crossed. "The nephews?" she asked quietly. "Alive," he said, "working a rig on Seth, getting paid. They have new names. They will not come home this year, perhaps next. The name here is the man who put them on the rig. He has been dealt with." "By you?" "By friends," he said. He did not elaborate. He turned the page. Behind the crossed names, there was, now, a fresh, clean page. "Ledger is closed," Vesra said. "Ledger is on holiday," Kal said. "The book is still here. If somebody gives me a reason, I will open it again. But nobody is going to give me a reason, not for a while." He shut the book. He put it in the drawer of the counter. He turned back to the stew. Outside, the snow was thickening. Osset was a cold city. It was, Vesra thought, exactly the city she would have chosen for a man who kept a tidy list. They ate. They talked. They did not once mention the ring. When they got up to leave, Kal Rennic walked them to the door. He wiped his hands on his apron. He looked at Vesra for a long moment. "Set the plate," he said. "I meant it." I have, she said. The Concord voted last month. Humanity sits at the table. My mother read your bill to the chamber, every point. Even the coffee. Even the coffee. He laughed. It was the same laugh she had heard in the tent that first morning when she had told him 1.4 gravity, and he had told her that was a day off. He opened the door for them. He stood on the step in the snow with his apron on. The bell rang. The street smelled of yeast and coal smoke. Somewhere down the lane a child was singing something wordless. He said quietly, so that only Vesra heard, "Thank you very much, Majesty, but just so we are clear, I still do not wash windows." She laughed. She was going to remember all her life that she laughed. She kissed his flowered cheek. She stepped out into the snow. She looked back once. He was already back at the stove. The lid was on the pot was on the fire, the cleaver was on the block, the book was in the drawer. She closed the door. What a journey! In this story, the true weapon was never the rail and never the cleaver and never even the pot lid. The real weapon was the ledger and the willingness to keep it honest, one name at a time, and to close it clean. Real strength is not the loudest thing in the room. It is the thing that sits down when it should sit down, that stands up when it should stand up, and that never once forgets to feed the people in front of it. If you love this story, drop your like. It is what keeps these tales alive out here in the vacuum. Share it with somebody who also loves science fiction about a human against the impossible. Subscribe and hit the bell so you do not miss the next epic in the HFY tradition. And now the question, and I want your honest answer in the comments. If the Queen had offered you the Marshal's cloak, would you have taken it and led her fleet? Or would you have walked away and gone home to Osset for a week off and one real cup of coffee? Tell me which one you would have chosen and why. Keep your eyes on the empty out there. Something is always looking back.